Dziękuję. Jesteśmy się drolling. Welcome. Coffee talk. Friends, we're talking about coffee. Coffee consumes the minds of Americans. We drink copious amounts of coffee. I like coffee. Some people love coffee. I'm more of a tea person myself. But there's a whole bunch of information about coffee that you guys probably don't know. And I would like to share it with you. Smoking out of my Savinelli tonight. Having a nice English. Some Star of the East. So, coffee. Let's talk about some facts about coffee. This might come across snotty, snobby, but please, I'm just sharing info here. And this is probably common info you could look up for yourself, but when you're buying coffee at the store, it's generally probably not the place you want to be buying coffee. Because it is best if you can buy your coffee beans green. Like green. Buy your coffee beans green. Why? They last a very, very long time that way. Which means, in turn, you'll have to be roasting them yourself. There's different ways you can do this at home. If you have like a campfire, that's the easiest way to do it. You could probably do it over your stove, open flame, if you have gas. The thing is, when you're roasting, you have to keep beans constantly moving. There's so many different things about different types of coffee. What part of the world it comes from, Mexican versus South American versus African. It's kind of like wine, Coffee can be like wine. Regions, what side of the mountain, types of precipitation, types of soil. There's like 1,200 different chemical compositions within coffee that kind of, add to the complexity of the whole thing. So, and then, if you're mixing this bean with that bean, and so if you buy them green, they're going to last you a long, long time. Roasting is not hard. Coffee time. So after you roast your beans, and they come out the way you wanted, right? You get about 6 weeks, they say. 6 weeks until they're, starting to lose their freshness. Now, if you're making what are they, French press, or if you're doing it at campfire, you would want your water to be 195 to 205 degrees Fahrenheit. So if it's boiling, that's too hot. If you need to boil the water, that's fine, but you have to boil and then kind of let it cool before you do your thing with your beans. So if you got your fresh roasted beans, you can drink coffee then. You can make coffee with that. But they say it's like a window of 2 to 3 days after you roast where they're at their peak. So after 2 to 3 days, you would want to, do your grind. Everybody likes their grinds different. And it depends kind of how you're making it. If you're doing campfire, or if you're doing it at French press, or you're going to put it through a machine. If you want fine grounds, you can get one of those. They sell these replica ones from the 18th century. what do they call it? It's like a Turkish coffee grinder. It looks like kind of like a modern pepper grinder, except there's like a swivel on top. You know, it's like a tall cylindrical, and you crank, and it gives like a fine grind. If that's what you're looking for, you could also mortar and pestle your beans. That's how I do it. So 2 to 3 days after your roast is kind of like the optimal time to grind and then drink your coffee. And like I said, you got 6 weeks. Once your coffee is roasted, you got 6 weeks with that coffee. Excuse me. What you don't want to do is you don't want to introduce any refrigeration or freezing. You don't want to introduce any moisture into that and completely ruin it. Now, here's the spoiler alert that most people don't really realize. If you grind your coffee, even if you freshly roasted that coffee that you have 6 weeks with, as soon as you grind your coffee, you go from 6 weeks to 12 hours of freshness. The freshness and the flavor. You want fresh ground coffee. Fresh coffee is those beans that have been roasted and then sat for 2 or 3 days, and then grind those, and that's fresh ground coffee. So anything at a store that's in a bag that's been in a warehouse that's been ground, that I don't care what the label says, it's not fresh. You get 12 hours. 12 hours is not a long time. Your flavor and your freshness drops from 6 weeks to 12 hours once you grind a bean. It's not very long. And even if you're buying whole bean in a store, how long has that been in a bag? How fresh? When was it roasted? Now, if you find a good coffee house, they're going to know all this stuff. A good coffee house is going to say when these beans were roasted, and if they're whole bean, or when the coffee was ground. Now, if they're just selling you on this has been ground this morning, that's fine and dandy. But how long have the beans been roasted for? Has it been a year? Have those beans been sitting around for a year? Even 6 months? That's not fresh coffee. If you have a palate for such things, you'll definitely notice the difference. I love coffee. I don't drink too much of it. Generally, and this is an average, twice a week at most, and when I do twice a week, it's no more than 2 mugs full. I'm pretty caffeine sensitive myself, but I'm more of a tea gentleman myself. I like tea, and I do drink hot chocolate, but herbal teas, I love herbal tea, but black teas are my favorite. I have a couple good white teas, but black tea is where it's at. And I don't really go in for all the name brands, Lions or Berries or, I'll drink what's there. But I love all the different types of black teas. But tea is another story, another video. If you guys have a chance to get green beans, get them. If you can. Roast them yourself. The research is out there. There's videos probably how to do it. They sell stuff if you want to do it over a campfire, which is really neat. Enjoy your coffee. Because I'm going to enjoy mine. Cheers. It's long and full. You are.